Ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Hey everybody, this is the Digital Asset Investor, and people are starting to ask a few questions now. Getting interesting.
Are you a believer? You talked about some of these exchanges, of course, are centralized. That's actually where been the breaking point in some of these. You look at an FTX or the like. Do you think an FTX situation or something like that would have been preventable if that was a business on U.S. shores?
Well, you know, it's a good question. I mean, frankly, I was and am quite furious about the fraud that is FTX and Sam Bankman-Fried. I probably haven't been that upset about an industry event since the bailouts of the too big to fail banks back in 2009. But you know, I do think that part of the dynamic we're faced with is that, yes, there is less of a clear path here in the U.S. And so there is, right, you know, an entity like FTX that largely operated more offshore, served U.S. clients. And yeah, we run into challenges.
Well, the reason I ask, and I don't know if you saw the news this morning, FTX Japan is effectively reopening because apparently they have the cash on their balance sheets. We've heard Sam Bankman-Fried had said that was the case, and also said similarly about the United States version of it that was living onshore. That has not reopened yet, but perhaps there actually is money there. What do you think of that?
Well, you know, in the case of Japan, it is one of those jurisdictions where they did create a specific cryptocurrency regulatory framework. You know. I think potentially in this case, I actually don't know the details, whether there's actually assets there. It sounds like there likely are for these clients. You know, I would have to understand the details a little bit better, but that would certainly be a good thing if those customers are able to get their.
So this is the incoming Kraken CEO, but basically Gary Gensler forces an FTX to operate offshore, but he won't tell you how you can operate onshore. He tells you to fill out a form, but he won't tell you which form. So here this is on Laura Shin's show. This is let's see what his position is. Chief Legal Officer at Coinbase. Everybody's starting to ask questions, and it's also got Rebecca Rettig, who's with Polygon now. She used to be the general counsel at Aave, who's one of the only companies that, since it's Ethereum based, that's allowed to stake and lend and all of that under the Gary Gensler regime. If I can get this guy going.
I think that at some point, these actions line up in a way that you have to wonder, is it all just a coincidence? Mm-hmm. And I think beyond that.
All the people that called us grand conspiracy theorists are all of a sudden they're wondering, what's going on with this government here?
You have to ask, why are we confronting restrictions, withdrawals, debanking of legal, recognized, highly regulated companies in this country? There are all sorts of fair questions to ask about the operations of different firms in crypto, and I would point out outside of crypto. But the notion that somehow the right way to constrain activities that give rise to concerns is to cut off their oxygen or slowly deplete them of oxygen, which of course in the financial world, there's no more important source of oxygen than banking services. I think that's something that is, as much as anything, explaining the strong reaction we're seeing, not just inside of the crypto community, but in the broader financial services community as well. That's a dangerous precedent. And it may be that crypto is currently the object of that particular approach. But if the government gets away with that with crypto, what's to say and what's to stop them from getting away with it as to a whole host of other legal, safe, regulated industries in this country that happen to be out of favor with policymakers?
If you enjoyed this,
let me tell you what's more dangerous, buddy. Here's what's more dangerous. How about if you have government officials, regulators, and politicians who are not working for Americans but are working for China and globalists? How about that? Because isn't that what's really going on? Gary Gensler gives George Soros meeting. George Soros actively works to undermine the United States of America. And he's having meetings with this guy while not having anything to do with over 75,000 XRP holders. How about that? Check out eGrag Crypto. I like this part right here. The RGB of XRP is explicitly indicating a mega pump is coming, but my concern is the ruling of the judge. Well, the ruling of the judge could cause a mega pump or cause a mega dump, right? We're going to find out sooner rather than later. Now, something that came up in one of my last videos was Sandy O'Connor, who's on the board of directors of Ripple. She's previously with JP Morgan. But on December 14th, just 6 or 7 days before the SEC lawsuit was dropped, she joins Ripple's board. Something that I didn't know until I looked recently, she is also on the board of BNY Mellon. Why is that important? BNY Mellon is one of the largest traditional custodians in the world. Did you know that PolySign was created by some of the guys that created the XRP ledger, and people from Ripple like Antoinette O'Gorman, and also people who are longtime executives at BNY Mellon? It's not just Tim Keeney. There's also another guy we've shown from the documentation. I don't remember his name, but he was one of the guys from BNY Mellon too. His name was on the corporate documents. This was an issue way back when that was brought up. Well, this was from the DTCC. This came out in the last 24 hours, I think. SEC announces T+1 implementation date. May 28, 2024 will be the final implementation date for the move to T+1 settlement for transactions in U.S. cash equities, corporate debt, and unit investment trusts. Do you remember this? Because Ray Fuentes not from PolySign, but from Link2 put this together on that PolySign interview from the other day and Digital Perspectives question.
Hi everyone, it's Ray at Link2, back with more insights related to the Link2 portfolio company, PolySign. Fellow Link2 Team Apollo member Brad Kimes asked PolySign CEO Jack McDonald a very specific question. He asked, is it wrong for us to think that PolySign's operations could be considered the next reiteration of the DTCC, Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation? The Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation is a financial services company that provides clearing, settlement, and information services for the securities industry at large. It's responsible for processing the majority of securities transactions in the United States and plays a critical role in ensuring the safety and efficiency of the financial markets. PolySign has the capabilities to provide services similar to the DTCC with their proprietary technology, AtomicNet. Hear it from PolySign CEO Jack McDonald himself. Jack states that PolySign isn't just targeting the U.S. financial markets, but the global financial markets, and not just the stock markets, but all asset classes. That's commodities, real estate, bonds, notes, investment options such as hedge funds, private equity, venture capital, infrastructure investments, cash, and cash equivalents. We're talking about quadrillions of dollars passing through the Link2 portfolio company's network.
Thank you guys so much for having me. Jack, just a pleasure to sit and listen to you talk about PolySign. I mean, very excited. Congratulations for being ready for the SEC and the major move towards qualified custodians. Come on in. I mean, that is remarkable right there. I don't know about anybody else. This crypto winter feels like it's going to be crypto spring really soon. Yeah. Jack, if I could just quickly, for a lot of people, and I talk to a lot of people every day, and I try to help them understand PolySign and standard custody. And, I have to ask you, to the layman, is it wrong to really see what PolySign and standard custody are doing as the next iteration of the DTCC?
I just read an article, a good article by Matt Levine, who writes for Bloomberg. He used to be a regulator that talks specifically about this. There is definitely a component to DTCC. I think in some ways, AtomicNet would be a part of a future DTCC, and I would love to be able to snap my finger. The difference between us and DTCC is that DTCC is a common, essentially, clearinghouse for all different brokers and custodians to come in, and they're the one centralized, trusted, recognized, settlement house in the U.S. We're not, we're one of, I don't want to say many, we're one of several. So, slightly different on that. But there's a component of it. And what we want to do on this settlement layer would provide definitely a DTCC-like utility to a much bigger outside, not just US global and not just equities, but all asset class. So that is part of the vision, to be that.
PolySign is building the future of digital assets. The link.
Great video. Now, reminder that on Link2, who is one of my sponsors, I'm a big owner of PolySign, and I'm planning on scooping more PolySign up this week. But the link's in the top of the description if you want to go see if you're interested. I'm major bullish on PolySign. Okay, I posed a question to John Deaton, and I'll kind of finish with this. Hey, John Deaton, is it possible for there to be an SEC versus Ripple partial settlement and partial appeal, which could end up in the Supreme Court? He says, in my opinion, Ripple would pay 100 to 250 million in a settlement if the SEC agreed publicly that current and future sales of XRP are not securities. The SEC is not going to agree to that in the middle of its war versus crypto. Judge Torres could provide clarity on secondary sales, which isn't appealed. Now, I think the judge is going to call XRP in the secondary market non-securities, but I think the problem that the rest of crypto has, even if they do that, is that the rest of crypto is still going to be in no man's land without a judgment specifically about that particular digital asset, because Gary Gensler is not going to stop. Here's another interesting one from Anders L. A hypothetical scenario. Torres rules current XRP sales are not securities. The SEC appeals and it goes to the Supreme Court. Would banks have legal clarity to use it unless it would be overruled by the Supreme Court and thus cleared until then? All right, and then he says both Gary Gensler in 2018 and 2019 and now Stuart Alderati has hinted at the Ripple case going all the way to the Supreme Court, but I'm sure the guy spending all his time spreading misinfo about XRP has the answers. I don't know who he's talking about. I'm the digital asset investor. I'm not an investment advisor. This is for entertainment purposes only. Please subscribe, hit the like button, and tell your friends and family that I like these hypothetical scenarios. And I also like dangerous conspiracies. They're not so dangerous. They're turning out not to be conspiracies is what we're finding out.